The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. We are going to give another minute or two for everybody else to trickle in, but this is the 2022 Data Science and AI Professional Salary Report webinar. We're looking forward to sharing some insights with you today, and just hang tight and we'll get started here in the next minute or two. For those of you that are trickling in, just hang tight. We're going to get started here in about another minute once we give a little bit more time for everyone to join in. All right, so we are going to get started here. Welcome everyone to the 2022 Data Science and AI Professional Salary Report webinar presented by Burtch. My name is John Lynn. I am an account lead and recruiter with Burtch. We're going to get started here with some information. Now, I'm confident that most, if not all of you, do know Burtch already, but just as a reminder, we are the leader in talent solutions in all things data. That's analytics, data science, marketing research, and the technologies that support them. I'm also very happy to share that we've once again been recognized this year by Forbes on their best recruiting firms list for a number of years running, which we're really proud of. And then there's just a few of the publications that we've been featured in over the years based on our research and insights that we've been able to provide to the community. I want to announce something special. We are actually going to be doing a raffle, so please stay till the end of the presentation today. 5 lucky attendees will have the chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card. So very excited about announcing that as a new piece of our webinar today. So please stay till the end so you're eligible to win one of those gift cards. Today presenting for us, we have Linda Burtch, who I know you all know. Linda is the founder of Burtch and has been recruiting in the quantitative science space for a long time, even before it was called analytics and data science. We also have Scott Nestler, who joined Burtch earlier this year. Scott holds his PhD in management science and statistics from the University of Maryland. He also has 20 years of experience in data science as a pracademic. So very excited to hear the insights that both Linda and Scott provide to us today based on the salary report. Also, just a reminder, please submit your questions throughout the presentation through GoToWebinar, as we will have a Q&A session at the end and want to make sure we're able to answer all the questions that you have. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Linda. Take it away.
Thank you, John, for that nice introduction. I am super excited to be presenting this year's data. Quite a change, certainly from last year. Prior to last year, some of the, I guess, salary studies were kind of turning into the same old, but that is definitely not true this year. First, Scott's going to be digging into the salary data and the changes that we've seen this year, and it's been an amazing ride. Also, Scott's going to get into some of the demographic details, and that's going to give you a better sense for what's going on in the market on a much more granular scale. In the second half of the presentation, I'm going to be talking about the trends that we've seen this year. And there is a lot of information to go through. We all know about the Great Resignation, and our research has provided us with a fair amount of insights around how that has impacted analytics teams as well as businesses in general, and of course, salaries more specifically. I also want to share with you some actions that my senior contacts and clients are taking in order to stem attrition. That's been a huge topic and concern this year. We will also talk about the hiring trends that we're seeing overall. We all know that hiring was red hot for a good part of last year and then going into this year up to very recently. So what's been going on now today, and what we're predicting for the rest of the year is something that we're going to do a little speculation on. So then on to answer your questions, as John mentioned, don't be shy. Be sure to get your questions in. And then finally, we're going to be announcing the winners of our raffle. 5 winners will receive a $100 gift card, but you have to be present to win. So hang in there. Hopefully Scott and I will be entertaining enough so you won't be tempted to drop off early. So we started producing these salary reports 10 years ago, which I find really hard to believe. The salary information is put together in a very different way than what's typically done by consultants like, let's say, the Hay Group or Towers Watson. They tend to work with much more limited data and also defined more geographically. The reason that I started this study in the first place is because there was really no accurate information available out there for the quantitative professions. They all tended to get lumped in with IT people, and that we all know is not correct. Our data is collected confidentially through personal one-on-one interviews. Now, I know that there are many laws and across many states that don't really allow employers to ask about current compensation anymore. But our experience here as recruiters has been that most people, because they know us, they trust us, they've been working with us for years, freely share their information with us. And the other thing is, because we are so seasoned in this data science recruiting area, we know when someone might not be giving us quite the right numbers. We probably have some information already in our database on the colleagues that might be sitting right next to them to kind of compare it to. Now, this year's report has information collected from over 1,800 analytics professionals. Those people are spread out across the country. They are at all levels of experience, and they span gobs of industries. We'll touch on the highlights this morning, but as John mentioned, there's plenty more information to dig into. So be sure to download your own personal copy. It's about 50 pages. It's free and it's on our website. So let's move on to the good stuff. Scott, tell us about salaries.
Thank you, Linda. Before we get into the details, I think we should talk a little bit about how we define data scientists and AI professionals. This is especially important for those of you who have been following our reports over the years, as there are some significant changes this year.
Yes, and I'll tell you that the naming convention change has been overdue. I mean, we all know that now everybody sort of describes themselves as a data scientist, even if all they know is Excel. But of course, that's not what we classify as a data scientist. So I thought it was important to clarify this change.
So like it says here on the slide, we consider data scientists to be the larger, more inclusive group, while AI professionals are a smaller subset of data science. We use these criteria, their salary bands, demographic characteristics, their academic backgrounds, and the tools they commonly use to differentiate between the two. Just to note that in previous years, our nomenclature was predictive analytics professionals, which we are now calling data scientists, and data scientists, which we are now calling AI professionals.
I hope that's not too confusing, but I think it lines up better with what we're seeing out there in industry.
So as you can see here, there are actually considerable similarities in the roles of data scientists and AI professionals. They both do work that covers the entire analytics cycle from problem definition through, acquiring data and building models to generate insights and recommend actions and support decisions. But there are also important differences. Primarily, it's in the type of data they use. We often see data scientists using structured data to do, regression and classification models, maybe some clustering, whereas AI professionals are often using unstructured data that could be text, images, video, audio, maybe even streaming data to solve more undefined problems and answer, questions to which leaders just don't have answers. Also, the level of computer science and coding in their background and that they use in the daily performance of their role differs. We're not saying data scientists don't use coding, but nearly every AI professional, has a significant background in and use of computer science and coding. And while data scientists and AI professionals often have similar backgrounds, like many of them have degrees in statistics and mathematics, there are differences too. It's more common for data scientists to have degrees in business analytics and economics, while AI professionals often come from computer science and engineering programs. You can see too the difference in some of the newer specialized master's programs as well. Now, keep in mind, these are not hard and fast rules, but rather generalizations based on those working in practice that we talk with regularly as part of our business. And again, there are many commonalities in tool sets. Both groups use Python, R, and SQL, but AI professionals tend to make heavier use of the various cloud platforms and some of the more specialized machine learning tools. But those in the broader data science category are increasing their use of tools over time. I think it's going to be more challenging in the future to, see the difference. Go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's going to be a real blurring between these two groups as the tools become more user-friendly. So we'll see into the future how this all sort of shakes out.
Okay, enough about the similarities and differences between data scientists and AI professionals. Let's look at some demographic analysis and the salary data that's contained in our study report. First off, we're going to start with some demographic information about each of these groups. So, as has been the case in the past, there are more data scientists and AI professionals with less experience than a greater number of years. I mean, this is typical of most fields if you think about it, especially those that are growing like this space is. Notice that the mean and median number of years for AI professionals are a few years lower than for the broader data science category. What we're now calling data science has been around for decades, while this version of what is called AI is relatively new, even if the term itself has been around for 50 or 60 years.
Yeah, and what's really driven this AI movement is how easy and cheap it is to store data now versus what it was like, let's say, even a decade ago. So cloud computing really changed everything.
As mentioned, one of the distinguishing features between data scientists and AI professionals is their highest level of education. While you can see here that a master's degree is the most common level of degree for those in both categories, note the difference in the percent with a doctoral degree. While only, and I put that in air quotes, 12% of data scientists have a PhD, 40% of AI professionals do. If we dig a little deeper into the educational backgrounds, we see that a degree in mathematics and statistics is the most common field for both groups, but there are some differences. Data scientists have larger representations from business, economics, and the social sciences, while AI professionals have a higher percentage that come from engineering, computer science, and the natural sciences. I think this last one might be based on the development of new programs in fields like computational biology, for example.
Yeah, I think also PhDs in physics oftentimes will become data scientists as another example. So it's a pretty, the field is is drawing people from a lot of different disciplines now, more so than it ever has.
In terms of where data scientists and AI professionals work, you can once again see that there is some commonality. For example, similar percentages working in consulting and healthcare. Data scientists, though, are more common in advertising and marketing and retail and CPG or consumer packaged goods.
Right, right. And examples of the kind of work that they're doing might include things like market mix modeling and marketing attribution, maybe forecasting, pricing, that sort of thing.
And in comparison, we see AI professionals dominating in the tech and telecom space and some of the other corporate roles. Like think about manufacturing and agriculture, where the Internet of Things or IoT is becoming more common, or maybe in government and healthcare, where the use of imaging applications are growing, computer vision and such.
For better, for worse.
If we look at the data regarding gender, we see that women make up 1 in 4 data scientists and 1 in 5 AI professionals. And if we look back to the past few years, these percentages are similar. And while there actually has been a significant growth in the number of women working in data science and AI, there's also been significant growth among men, which keeps the proportions roughly the same over time.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged by women and how excited they are about getting into the data science world. I was lucky enough to be able to attend in person a conference this spring at Stanford University for women in data science, and it was just there were 400 women there, and it was just so amazing.
Okay, let's now move on to what you really want to know more about. We're going to talk about money. Before we do that, however, I need to briefly explain how we break down the categories into groups and levels based on experience, type of work, and managerial responsibilities. Okay, so first what we do is we break down both data scientists and AI professionals into 2 categories: individual contributors, which you'll see abbreviated as ICs, and managers, which we call MGs. And then what we do is further segment each of these groups into 3 levels based on things like the number of years of experience and type of work performed for the individual contributors, and the number of direct reports and type of leadership exercised for managers. As you see, a level 3 has more experience, more responsibility than a level 2 or level 1. So shown here are 6 time series, one for each of the categories that I just discussed, and we're looking at the percent change in median base salary for data scientists in this case. As you can see, in recent years, each of them had salary growth that was in the low single-digit range, like 0 to 4 or 5%. But this year, there was a much more significant jump, with the range being from 8 to 12%, depending on the category and level.
Yeah, back in the beginning of these studies 10 years ago, we saw a bit of a bump in the first couple of years, but then it really sort of flattened out, and we kept seeing 2 and 3% changes from year to year. So this year, it's just there's never been anything like this, and it's tremendous. There's a lot of factors that are coming into play here that I think we'll spend a little time talking about in the later slides.
And similarly, here is the percent change in median base salary for AI professionals. Again, this year we see much more significant increases, in the range of 7 to 12%, again, depending on the category. Not surprisingly, salaries do differ across geographic regions. As you might expect, salaries on the West Coast and in the Northeast are higher than in the other regions. Interestingly, the mountain states, shown in kind of the medium blue color, are a bit higher than in the Midwest and the Southeast.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's going on there. I did some thinking about that because it surprised me, and it's different from what we've seen in the last few salary studies. But I think it's getting a little more complicated with people moving to less lower cost of living areas, like let's say deciding to make a move to Texas, or maybe making a move from California or Arizona, and so on and so forth. So there may be some complicating factors that's going to drive some change here with some leveling out. We'll see, though. I don't know.
As previously mentioned, median base salaries increased by 7 to 13% at all levels for individual contributors in both categories. In real terms, the increases were about $10,000 at each level. For managers, we see similar increases percentage-wise, but because they do have a higher median base salary, the actual amount of increase is more like $20,000 in the past year. Now, if we flip over and look at the AI professionals, once again, for individual contributors, we see increases in the high single-digit, low double-digit range. Again, $10,000 or $15,000 increases, which is, roughly the same as for the data science individual contributors, at least in percentage terms. And for managers in AI, this pattern continues. We see that they're similar to what we saw for data science managers, but again, due to higher levels of compensation, the actual amounts of increases are $15,000 to $25,000 a year. And then I really like this slide. It's not surprising that given the higher levels of education, the tools used, the type of work performed, that we see median salaries for AI professionals being greater than for other data scientists. And one of the other interesting things is you can see that there really isn't a difference at the MG3 level, because once you get there to the kind of strategic management leadership level, the managerial skills are equally or maybe more important for both data scientists and AI professionals, as their use of technical skills tends to, drop off. And now that we've gone through the numbers, I'm going to pass it back to Linda to talk through some of the market insights contained in our salary study report.
That was great, Scott. Thank you. Like I said, lots of interesting changes this year, all very positive if you are a data science or AI professional, but maybe not so much if you're a team leader trying to hold your group together, or even worse, if you're trying to expand and hire in this super overheated market. Now, I've been doing this for, as John said, decades, and there's never been a market like this. Candidates are getting multiple offers, they're getting counter offers, they're getting huge sign-on bonuses or big equity packages. As Scott mentioned, we've had a giant gap in supply and demand as companies now see data as mere table stakes in doing business. Now they need to distinguish themselves by using this data to glean insights in a smarter way, and to then make smarter business decisions. So this year has been a blockbuster, pretty much, if you're an employee. But I gotta say, not so much if you're an employer. So here's some interesting data points for you. We took a look at a random sample of data science and AI professionals nationwide through LinkedIn, almost 500 people. And we found that in this last year, over the last 12 months, we found that 33% of people changed jobs. Now that's huge. The last time we did this analysis was back in 2017, where about 17% changed jobs. We found the tenure of these job changes was 3.2 years. Now, here's a breakdown of that data by the number of years experience. So of the people with less than 5 years experience, 46% changed jobs last year. That's a lot. And even more eye-popping, if you had between 6 and 10 years experience, there was a 53% chance that you took a new position. So if you're a team leader, it was not your imagination that half your team turned over in the last year. It was pretty much happening everywhere. Now, of course, movement was less frequent with the more seasoned professionals, as you can see on this chart. Oh, and also I wanted to mention that we took a look at the data broken down by gender, and very interestingly, men and women both changed jobs at exactly the same rate. We also wanted to quantify how much people were getting when they changed jobs. Now, just to back up a little bit, the increase in base compensation that Scott was talking about earlier was about the mean and median across people who both changed jobs as well as people who did not change jobs. So it is going to be less obvious than the average of the sample that only, obviously less than the average of a sample that only includes people who change jobs, as this data shows. We found that 16% got an increase of less than 10%. Then 33% got an increase of between 10 and 20%, and a whopping 51% got an increase of greater than 20% in their base salary when they changed jobs.
Hey, Linda, I'd like to point out that even though it doesn't appear, or you can't see it on this chart, that some of those who got an increase of 20 or more percent got increases that were significantly higher
Yeah,
than that, like 30 or
right.
40% when changing jobs. Now, granted,
Mhm.
a lot of that's when someone's moving up in level or maybe adding management responsibilities too.
Right, right, right. And typically you'll see those big jumps at the more junior levels. So somebody who's, let's say, early on in their career, they're making a base salary of 80, we were seeing offers come out 100 to 110 for candidates like that. So those are pretty significant compensation bumps. Now, the overall base salary increase across the entire sample was just a bit over 20%. And then we can compare that to the average increase of 6.6% across all disciplines and industries. Now, that's according to the Commerce Department. So what was behind all this job changing and these unprecedented salary increases? Many factors, but let's talk about a few. First, simple economics. There's a huge mismatch between supply and demand, and that naturally pushes salaries up and encourage people to consider a change. So then during 2020 and into early 2021, which you probably all remember, if you had a job, you hung on to it. Nobody was in the mood to take any chances with a job change unless they lost their job and really were forced into the market. So there was a good amount of pent-up demand because people hung on to their jobs for longer than they might have to change jobs in later in 2021 and 2022. So this contributed to people kind of having that itch to make a move. Also, many companies became much more open to the idea of a fully remote workforce. And I'm not talking about, sort of the local / hybrid option, but fully remote with maybe a requirement to come into headquarters a couple of times a year or something like that. So no longer as a job seeker were you constrained to consider options only locally, but now you're able to consider options all over the place. Now this again, of course, increased candidate options and increased their negotiating power. And then finally, if you saw all your friends leaving a company for big salary increases, why wouldn't you? Or at least, why wouldn't you at least explore options? And many people did just that.
On that last point about more money, I guess we could look at that as a good news story, given that the The recently released figures show inflation at more than 8%. While many workers across the country are challenged to keep up with increases in expenses, it appears that compensation for data scientists and AI professionals are keeping up with or maybe even exceeding inflation.
Yep, yep, so true. So during this last year, I have been an invited speaker and also participated in a number of panels to talk about what organizations can do to combat attrition and effectively recruit new hires to their team. There's been a lot of interesting discussions and ideas kicked around, so I wanted to share some of those with you today. Now, this first one seems obvious, but relationships matter. You've likely heard that people leave companies, but they don't leave a good manager. Those bonds are super important, and especially when with the more junior level staffers. I know it's harder to do with today's work from home setups, but it's even more important with a remote workforce to forge that solid relationship. So secondly, everybody wants to think that the work that they do matters to an organization. So make sure that you connect the work that your people are doing to how it impacts the performance of the overall business. Also, even more important, to make sure that their work is actually implemented by the company.
Linda, there's indications that only a small percentage of data science projects actually make it into production. But in talking with candidates, what I hear is that data scientists and AI professionals do care about seeing their work being used to support decisions and actions by their organization.
Yeah, it's really important. So, yeah. Also, everybody wants to know what their career path might look like. What are their options going to be longer term? What's been the promotions of other people ahead of them? Or even just movement, not necessarily promotions. Analytics people love to learn and grow, which kind of leads to the next point. Opportunities to learn are super important to these folks, especially in this field that's really changing so quickly. Things like lunch and learns and online courses and conference attendance and so on and so forth. Everybody knows that quantitative people are naturally curious, and you need to feed that. And you must also build, in my opinion, a nonstop recruiting process into your game plan. You have to plan and assume that attrition is going to happen. Now, I would encourage you to hire even ahead of the curve if you can.
One of the other things that we're seeing from our clients is that companies are working to streamline their hiring processes to prevent losing candidates in the pipeline. I mean, with the exception of a very few high-profile companies, candidates are less willing to complete an onerous take-home project than what they might have been in recent years.
Right. So definitely keep that in mind as you're developing your recruiting process. Be careful about making it too extended. So make sure also that you and your human resources partners stay close to compensation trends. Offers have to be competitive, and you need to make if you need to make any internal adjustments for internal equity purposes, you got to take a hard look at that now. So, and then finally, encourage boomerangs. Stay in touch with people who leave. And especially in the case if they're locked into your location for maybe personal reasons and they took a job working remotely. They may realize that the grass is not always greener on the other side and may return to you. So what does the future have in store for data scientists? Let me look into my crystal ball and see what I see. So everyone has no doubt heard this very appropriate saying these days: the only constant in life is change. I was going to use the saying, what goes up must come down, but I thought that was a little too gloomy, so I eliminated that. So things out there in the business world are changing really rapidly now, as we know, even on a day-to-day basis. Now, clearly, there's a high likelihood that we're now coming up into an economic slowdown and perhaps even a recession. So the rapid fire hiring for data scientists may hit a speed bump soon, but on the other hand, it might not. So in the last handful of weeks, we've had some headline quotes from some pretty well-known business leaders. Now, I'll leave it to you to decide if they're maybe credible or not. And here's a short list of notable recent layoffs and cutbacks and hiring freezes. You could probably easily have predicted many, like let's say Peloton, Coinbase, Compass, but more of a surprise, Netflix and Meta. And even Amazon has announced that they've overhired. So are there more layoffs and cutbacks to come? Let's look at some numbers and see what's really going on, at least in the data science community. So every year we gauge expected hiring plans for the first half, and then at mid-year, the second half from our many contacts. So at the beginning of this year, 83% of our respondents said that they were planning to hire. That was the highest percentage we have ever encountered in doing this analysis. I wanted to be able to present more recent expectations. So last week, I sent out a flash survey to get a gauge on what people's, what groups what they're planning to do in terms of hiring for the second half of the year. So what's anticipated for the rest of the year? Well, I asked my staff what their guess was at yesterday's morning stand-up, and I got responses anywhere from that 83% number going down to 40% or 60%. But drum roll, please. This is what we've found. Now, the number of companies intending to hire went down, but just by a tiny bit, 81%. In January also, there was not one mention of layoffs or even of hiring freezes. But in this recent survey from this last week, we just got a tiny taste of a cooling in the labor market for sure. I should also mention this was a sample size of 130 different companies across the country. We're also, also I want to add that, we're working right now on hundreds of openings of open jobs, and so far only one has been put on hold. So it's extraordinary. That has surprised me that it's held up so well. But it is a time of change. So make sure you follow us, and as we continue to monitor these developments in the market. There's going to be a lot going on in the upcoming months, I think. So things are good. The future of data science is nothing less than spectacular. And congratulations to all of you for picking the right field of study to support a long and prosperous career. Companies are racing to stay competitive and are now very aware of the critical need to leverage their data to stay ahead of the pack, or at least maybe in the middle of the pack. New technology is going to continue to bring more and more opportunities to the data science community. You all have the ability to have a meaningful impact. And I'm not just talking about driving profits to the bottom line of organizations, but also to improve lives through smarter use of data. Those opportunities are all around us, and they're waiting for you to add your contribution and your passion. So thanks for joining us today. Now, John's going to be back with just a little bit of advertising for Burtchworks, so hang in there. Then on to the Q&A. And it looks like we have a number of interesting questions to get to, and of course, the raffle. So John, take it away.
Thank you so much, Linda, and thanks to Scott as well. Really great, valuable insights coming out of this year's report. Wow, what a crazy year it's been. So just, we're going to run through a couple things as Linda had mentioned. First and foremost, we will be announcing our raffle winners at the end of the Q&A. So stick around. You must be still present in order to win. So keep an eye out for that. If you are, as Linda had mentioned, looking to download the report, you can do so at birchworks.com/study. It's 50 plus pages. It goes even more in depth into a lot of the insights that Scott and Linda mentioned today. So please check that out. If you are hiring in these spaces or in these areas, in addition to our direct placement services, we also have seen an uptick in demand for contract resources in these areas as well. So if you have any interest, whether it's to add full-time to your team or whether it's to look for increased skill set and contract staffing, please reach out to us if you're interested in hearing more. Also, please check out our blog. We're posting constantly on our blog a lot of great content and insights that our marketing team and really our entire recruiting team helps put together. Just an example of a couple things. There's career tips specifically for data scientists and AI professionals, information for our clients and or companies on how to, better improve your process for hiring, as well as obviously the latest market insights that you'll typically see come through. And also, please, if you haven't yet, follow us on our social media. We're across most of the major social media platforms, and it's another way to engage with our content. So if you have questions, please, as we said, submit them through the chat box. But I do have a couple really good ones that already came in. And I'm going to start off with the first one to you, Linda and Scott. This one's a huge topic on everyone's mind right now. We didn't talk extreme amount about work from home, but what are some of the trends as it relates to work from home that we're seeing? And, how is that impacting salaries and compensation?
That's a great question, and it's something that everybody wants to know. But there is a pretty significant disconnect, I think, between what the companies want and what they prefer and what the employees want. We did a study earlier this year looking at that. So from a hiring perspective, from a company's perspective, 36% of companies were open to hiring people who want to work remotely. But you contrast that when we asked candidates what they wanted, something like 3/4 of the people, I'm not sure exactly what the number was, but I think it was 3/4 of the people wanted to work entirely remotely. So there's a real push-pull going on there that, and I'm not quite sure exactly how that's going to shake out in the end. So, but it's an interesting topic to consider.
And I'm going to add a quick follow-up that I saw come through as well. What impact do you think remote work will have on promotability or individuals that are looking to advance their career with an organization?
I get that question a lot too from, when I'm on panels. And again, I know the candidates don't want to hear this, but it will impact you in a negative way longer term if you decide to be a remote worker. And, I'm telling my young adult children the same thing, and they're like not having it. But I'm a little bit old fashioned that way, but again, I think that collaboration and spontaneous learning that goes on in an in-person environment is invaluable to somebody who wants to develop as a leader and who really wants to grow as a business person too. So that's my opinion, but I know many people will disagree with that.
Great. Here's one that came through that I thought was kind of interesting. Do you think that hiring will get easier than it has been now with the layoffs that are coming through from places like Coinbase and Loan Depot and some of the others that you mentioned?
Yeah, right. I think all of my clients wish that were the case, but it's just the mismatch between supply and demand is still so, that gap is huge. So let's just say not yet. So I don't know, Scott, do you have any observations there or anything to add to that?
My sense is that those who've been working in, in roles that require high levels of expertise, who've been laid off will help. There will be some increase in supply. Is it going to be significant enough to, fill that gap? No, probably not. But to start to do it, yeah, there will be some high quality folks out there, I think, in the market in the short term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And we'll see, let's see what happens 2 months from now, 3 months from now.
Great. Another one here. What is your take on including salary ranges in job postings? So the question asker continues to go on to say, it seems to be good for everyone involved, though their head of HR at their company claims it rules folks out who think they're not worth that when they see a high range and then they won't apply to the role. Are there any pros and cons that you see to including salary ranges in job postings?
I am a big believer in transparency, both on the candidate side and on the client side. There is a salary range, so why not publish it? And if somebody is making significantly less than that, I doubt if they will not send their resume for a compensation that's in a much higher range. They will. I disagree with that. I think that's not valid. It saves a lot of time. It saves any sort of miscommunication. We always, well, maybe not always, but I'd say 95% of the time include a compensation number with our any kind of advertising or posting that we do, any kind of emails that we send out. Again, I am a huge believer in transparency, which kind of runs counter to a lot of what's going on out there.
And I would add that we're also seeing, various state laws. I think Colorado was the first one, then New
Yep.
York, that are requiring some
Yeah.
degree of salary transparency. And it's interesting to see the way that companies have reacted to that. Some are providing what I would
Right.
call useful ranges. Others are providing ones where, the lower limit is half the upper limit, which I would say is not particularly useful for anyone, but maybe
Right.
complies with the law. But yeah, I'm
Right.
with you, Linda. Salary transparency on both sides is a good thing in my mind, and I think we and employers should do it wherever we can.
Couldn't agree with both of you more there. Absolutely. Here's a good one. So we mentioned and we spoke a couple times about keeping the interview process concise. What guidance would you give to organizations on what the right duration of interviews or the different workflow steps should be? And then on the flip side, what may be considered onerous?
Mm-hmm. Scott, you want to start with that?
Sure, I can do that. I mean, at a high level, I'd say try to keep your process to something that can be measured in weeks, not months. And in terms of, numbers of rounds, I mean, a screen with an HR person followed by a meeting with, someone who, is a hiring manager, maybe a panel of 3, and then like a final confirmation interview seems, like more than enough to me. Where you get, 6, 7, 8 rounds, it just candidates tend to lose interest. And then the other way I would define onerous is, these long take home, hey, take a few days to do this, spend 12 or 15 hours, solving this problem. In the current market where there's such an imbalance between supply and demand, many quality candidates are going to look at it and just say, yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
Right. Right. And that happens all the time now. So so be careful when you're putting together a hiring process.
Great. This is a good one that's not really tied necessarily to compensation, but some of the other things, Linda, you had mentioned as it relates to what's important to data science and AI professionals. How often are you either seeing or hearing from individuals that are leaving their current job or saying they want to leave their current job because they're not actually doing what they thought they would be doing when they were hired? This individual goes on to say, heard that there can be an issue when companies don't really know what they need as it relates to their data science and AI professionals.
Right. Yeah. I have heard that kind of comment back, especially when it's a new initiative. So when an organization says, well, everybody's got data scientists, so I better get one, buyer beware. because you need to be very, very certain that the commitment is there to see, because everybody knows, data science, you're not going to see results in a week or a month even, or even 2 months. You really need to be able to, what I tell senior leaders who are going in to develop a function, which is a job, the type of job that I work on a lot. I let them know that they need to jump in, sort of assess the landscape, figure out where they can sort of pick some low-hanging fruit just to show some quick wins, some quick results, but at the same time have going on, a hiring plan and longer term initiatives, more complicated or sophisticated solutions, and so on. But that is a problem, and you need to be very careful in the kinds of questions and the probing that you do when you are going through an interview cycle with a situation like that where the initiative is new.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I remember in my and some of my conversations that it's a sense of understanding where the organization is at, and even going through the interview process, right? And making sure as an individual that you're going to be a great fit for what they're looking for, right? And not just necessarily the other way around. So totally agree with you there, Linda. Here's an interesting one. What would both of your take be on how important business acumen is for data science and AI professionals as it relates to hiring? Is it mainly technical skills that organizations are looking for, or is the business acumen side and the understanding of the business, also extremely important?
Yeah. Well, technical skills is that's the foundation. But you're really being hired to solve, well, in most cases, you're there to solve business questions, right? So you really have to understand the bigger context first in order to know how to approach, responding to that with your technical skills. Technical skills, I would argue, is the hard part. You got to have that foundation. You have to have years of math, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, strong coding skills. All of that's super important. And layering on top of that, the understanding of the business question at hand. What is the objective? What are the factors going into it, et cetera, et cetera. That's all really important. But, I think that part's like the easy part. The technical stuff, that's hard. That's my opinion. But anyway, Scott,
I'll add on a little bit there. Companies are definitely looking for both. Like you said, the technical stuff is kind of a baseline or a foundation, but those who succeed and advance bring those other business skills, people skills, communication skills, strategic thinking to the table and add to just doing quantitative analysis. So they're both important without a doubt.
Excellent. All right, last one, and this one kind of ties on the whole theme of really our salary report. But the analysis that we have in here covers, mainly base compensation. Could you two maybe shed some light onto overall compensation structures, including, stock, bonuses, those types of things, and what you're seeing as the trends in the marketplace right now to attract talent?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I think, the reason we report on base salaries only is because the variable compensation is just that. It's variable. You may have a bonus target, which may or may not pay out, right? And most of you probably are like, well, of course bonuses pay out. Well, if we run into a heavy duty recession here, you might not get that bonus. So it doesn't have the same sort of consistency and meaning. And then also, the other components, the equity component, be it RSUs or sign-on bonuses and so on, they are definitely going out there. And we advise our clients on a sort of case-by-case basis on how to handle that particular situation, because it varies on things like location and level of candidate. And also, what else does that candidate have going on that they're comparing it to? So lots and lots of factors go into that. Base salary is more of a constant, and that's why we report on that, and we leave out all the rest.
Great. Any last thoughts, Linda or Scott, to share with the group before we wrap and announce our raffle winners and then close down for this year's salary report webinar?
Yeah,
Well,
John,
I
one
think,
thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
One
Sorry.
thing I was going to say is we got a lot of really good questions submitted. We only got to answer a few of them in the time that we had here. I'm going to take a look at trying to address some of the other ones, maybe not, individually, but maybe in a future blog entry or something. We'll try to address some of the other questions that we got.
Great. Well, the future is bright. I just want to say that, even if we do hit a slowdown here, I am convinced the data scientists will come out of this, maybe not unscathed, but very close to it. So you guys are all, just in a really, really good spot right now. And, good luck. Good luck. Stay in touch for sure.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Scott and Linda, for all the great insights. And I want to announce a congratulations to our winners of our raffle, Syed Makbul, Mimi Park, Jay Shah, Adam Nielsen, and Sabrina Owen. So keep an eye out for some information coming from us on how to accept and collect the gift card as being a winners of our raffle. So thank you everyone for joining today. As always, if you have any questions on anything or there's anything that we could help you with here at Burtchworks, please email us at info@burtchworks.com and download the study, the report, the salary report for this year, www.burtchworks.com/study. We really appreciate everyone joining today, and we look forward to seeing you on our future webinars. Have a great rest of your day.